Welcome to the Worldwide Doula podcast. I'm Barry, I'm a registered nurse and birth doula, and each week I'm joined by a new guest speaker to talk about all things pregnancy, birth, babies, and parenthood. So it's time to sit back and relax as we get into some juicy topics. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Worldwide Doula podcast. Today I'm here with a gorgeous mama, Claudia. She's been a good friend of mine for a few years. She lives in Brisbane with her partner and her gorgeous daughter, Aria, who has such a wonderful personality. I love watching your Instagram stories of her. She's so funny. She's so confidently herself. Yeah, welcome to the podcast, Claudia. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for inviting me on. I loved listening to birth stories while I was pregnant, so it's really fun being on the other side of it now.
Yeah,
Hopefully this will contribute to someone else's story.
I love listening to all those birth stories. You know, you can ask all the questions that you want from your midwife or the doctor or your doula and stuff, but I feel like the true learning is from other people's experiences, and each experience is so different. So just because you listen to someone's experience doesn't mean that you're going to have that experience. But yeah, it's always good to learn.
Exactly.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah. So currently I'm working as a product designer, which is essentially a problem solver. So I design and execute solutions that will solve user experiences in products. Usually it's across websites and apps, but I also have a one-man led studio, which is led by me, which is called Mouse House, which is mostly art and illustration.
I was checking out your Instagram because I didn't realize that I didn't follow you, but I follow your personal account, but not your Mouse House account. I was looking at your illustrations and I was thinking, oh, I would love to get some for my house. Do you ship to Indonesia?
Yeah, I go through a printing studio, so we ship worldwide.
Oh, awesome. They're so simple, but so beautiful at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. What a dream, being able to do that as a job.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing to do, also at the same time caring for a newborn.
Yeah. Was it easy to do?
It was very, very hard, especially because she only contact napped for, I'd say, the first 6-7 months.
So she was in your arms constantly.
Yeah, it's really hard to paint.
When you've got a baby attached to you. And where can people find you on Instagram?
Oh, shameless plug. It's at Mouse, which is MAUS __ house, which is HAUS.
Go and check it out because she's got some really good work. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Brandon and what he does?
So Brendan and I have been together, this year will be 10 years. Really crazy to think about sometimes. And he is currently a mechanical engineer based in Brisbane as well.
Does he still work remotely or just more at home?
He's hybrid, so he's working usually around 3 days in the office, 2 days at home.
Oh, that's good. Because I remember he was away a little bit.
Yeah, he used to be before. He got this job a couple of months before we had Aria. So the previous job, he was away a lot, going out to sites, and he'll be gone for, weeks at a time. So part of the job change was also just to have a bit of a better lifestyle. Baby coming, it'd be very hard having, up to 3 weeks of doing the whole thing by myself.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me, how did you guys meet? Are you guys married?
Ooh.
I know the answer.
No, we're not married. We're both in university. So it's 2014. My best friend knew him from college. And me and my housemates were having drinks at ours and we're going to go out afterwards. And so she just brought him along to that because we invited a bunch of people to come and she just brought him along. She thought it'd be good for him to do that, I guess. And then, that night, we were all going out and him and I just started chatting. And it was really nice chatting, really. From there on, I think we swapped info and just kept talking and then it just blossomed
into a beautiful relationship. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the best relationships come from ones that are least expected, right?
Oh, exactly.
So tell us about your conception with Aria. Were you trying or did you plan it? Was it a surprise? What was your story?
It was definitely a surprise. We weren't trying at all.
Did you guys talk about kids before?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Throughout our whole relationship, I think every now I was on the pill up until a bit before I was pregnant with her. But every now and then we would have the chat around what would happen if I got pregnant now. And we talk about those options for us. And obviously, for a while, we're students, and that would have been quite hard to do at the same time. But definitely both wanted kids. We just weren't exactly sure when at that stage.
I remember you telling me that you were on like natural birth control, or you were trying out like the calendar method.
Yeah. So the year before I conceived Aria, I had just gone off the pill just because it was affecting me mentally, hormonally, and I just wanted a bit of a break, and it led to a break of sort of anything to do with like just inserting anything into my body. I just wanted to just like my body do what it needed to do. And so that's where we decided to use the fertility app with the basal body temperature tracking as well. I think it was natural cycles, just to know those like days where we need to be safer with contraception, whether that be condoms or the pull-out method.
The pull-out method.
We had the discussion before me going on the app. We had been together at that point for 6 years. We were both full-time working at that stage. So we were, financially comfortable, I'd say like a bit more mature around that time too. So we did discuss that. Even though we're not actively trying, we recognize that the app can lead to easy human error, and that we are prepared if I do fall pregnant within that time, but obviously try our best to do well with the app. But yeah, just if we fell pregnant, then we did, because we were prepared for it. So yeah, we we're actively trying.
It was a pleasant surprise. It wasn't like too much like, shit, we're pregnant.
Somehow it still was. I'd say we were pretty like vigilant for the first year of using it, until I guess we just weren't for the last 2 months. And I guess, because like that was December and January, those like last 2 months of it, which is, holidays, drinking, all those things that can interrupt the data on the app. And so when we thought we were in the safe zone, seems like we weren't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's actually pretty effective. But yeah, as you mentioned, human error. Yeah, I actually went on the natural cycles, but they don't ship the thermometer to Indonesia. So
I
had to kind of decide I can't do it if I don't have the thermometer. How long did you have to wait until you got your period back after coming off the pill? Just curious.
I remember being pretty quick, to be honest. Like, I think it was only like 1 or 2 months, maybe.
Oh, okay. So like super quick. Some women have to wait 6 months. Some women have to wait a year. Some women get it back straight away. That's really interesting. Were you taking supplements or anything like that? Like, I mean, you weren't really preparing, so you weren't like doing anything special to prepare your body to fall pregnant.
No, I think we realized maybe the week before I was drinking.
Yeah.
Definitely not preparing.
How long into your pregnancy were you when you found out that you were pregnant? Or like, how did you know?
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
I was about like 4 days late from my period, whereas at most ever be maybe 2 days late. That was like extreme for me, of it being late was 2 days. But that weekend I had the flu really badly. So I thought maybe, it was just my body was just maybe delaying it just to recover. But it was just, it was around that day 4, and I was like, oh, this is getting a bit dicey. And Brendan was going out grocery shopping. Brendan was going out grocery shopping, and I was like, he's like, do you need anything? And I'm like, do you need to grab a pregnancy test? I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but just grab it. And he was like, all right. I for sure thought I was just being paranoid, 100% thought it was just going to be negative, and did it. And I remember him lying on the bed, and I grabbed it, and it was like, had like the 2 lines or whatever it is. And I just looked at him, and he's like, what is it? And I just like threw it to him. He's like, what does it mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah. An hour later, I took another test, and it was just like straight away pregnant. And then I think we were just so shocked. Everything that we knew around like pregnancy and what are the next steps and everything just like left our minds. So I called my mum and I said, I need to take your mum hat off and put your nurse's hat on. I just tested that I was positive for pregnancy twice. Could that be wrong? She's like, no. She's like, false positives are quite rare, and especially 2. And she's like, but just call up GP. You have to go to the GP and they'll confirm for you. And I was like, okay. And I think I was still in denial up until I saw the GP a few days later, and I did the test. And then she's like, all right, she's like filling out all these forms. And then she's like, okay, so we're going to do this and this next. And I'm like, she's like, any questions? And I'm like, so I am pregnant? Yes, you are.
How did you feel? Were you like putting your pants or?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's the moment that your whole life will change, right?
I think that's the thing that was running through my mind the most. Like I knew him and I would be able to like raise a child. I knew I was like responsible enough to do it. Again, we were in like a good place in our lives that we could. It was just more like that the everything coming together of like, yeah, everything's going to change now.
Yeah, reality hits.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have to say, so many women have that moment. You know, even if they are trying, they're like, oh my gosh, it's happening.
Oh yeah, I bet.
I have those moments where, you know, I'm 25. I thought I would feel more grown up as a 25-year-old.
I know.
And you're like, oh, I'm going to be responsible for someone, another human being. Like, it's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you get pregnant previously, did you ever think about how you wanted to give birth, or like what you wanted to do, natural birth or anything like that?
I'd always wanted to aim to have baby vaginally and then do what I can to not have the epidural, naturally, everything as possible. But at the same time, I think also having a mum that was a nurse, and also at that point for a few years a quality manager of a hospital, and just hearing the stories from women where they had these very strict plans and then something happened, like some emergency happened, and then, you know, they had to go another way, and it was quite traumatic for them. I think growing up with that, I also recognized that it's nice to have my plan in place of like what I wanted to do, but I was still open to whatever we had to do to safely have the baby. The baby is safe and healthy, and I'm also safe and healthy. And that was my plan going forward.
Just to have whatever needed to be done to have a healthy baby. Yeah. Did you try and go for like a group midwifery practice or anything like that?
So this is 2021, so COVID was still was still a big thing at the time, and they were encouraging women that if you could, to see your GP throughout your pregnancy up until you had that. I think there's a midwife appointment around 35 weeks, I think, at the hospital that you're registered to birth at. So I saw a GP for my pregnancy.
Okay. Did you feel like you were properly educated and all that stuff?
No.
No.
No, I walked away from a lot of those appointments like crying and calling my mum, because I could definitely tell I was her, 200th pregnant woman. But
yeah,
for me, it was my first. So I felt like if I had questions, she would answer them, but they were slightly dismissed. Or I think it wasn't until like a few appointments later that I realized why she was taking my blood pressure, and whereas like she just wouldn't explain things to me, and I wouldn't ask questions because I had no idea what questions to ask up until maybe afterwards. My mum would say, oh, did she tell you about this and this and this, and I'm like, no. But I was also really scared to go through the whole process of finding a new GP that I really liked. So I stayed with it and just stuck it out, I guess. Tried to go online to find the other answers that I needed.
Yeah, it's scary. This is the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast, to put information out there so that people can understand and educate themselves. And like, there's so many resources now that keep popping up. Like, there's new episodes, new Instagram profiles that educate you specifically about one thing, like breastfeeding or something. And some of them are really great, and others are just like scare tactics.
There's almost too much now. You don't even know where to start at times, and you're like, is this applicable to me? So
exactly.
It's like, I'm feeling okay. Do I really need to like read up a lot on preeclampsia right now? I don't know. So I think, so having someone throughout your pregnancy that can help guide you in what's happening with you at the time as well, I think is really important. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. That's good to know. I mean, GPs, they're not specialized in helping women prepare for a pregnancy. Like, they know general stuff.
No.
They're not specialized. And doctors are great, but the reality is that they're specialized in things that go wrong. Like, they're specialized in dealing with things when they go wrong. Midwives are specialized in physiological birth and helping women have a natural birth as much as they can. When you involve an obstetrician, most of the time they just go worst case scenario, which is what they're trained to do. It's not their fault.
No, exactly.
So who was part of your birth team at the end of the day? Like, the GP obviously didn't come into the hospital with you. Did you end up having a hospital birth?
Yes, it was the hospital midwife, Brendan, and my mum.
Okay. How was it having your mum there? Just curious.
There's this big feeling of relief, to be honest, because at the time the borders from New South Wales into Queensland was shut, but because she worked in Queensland and she had to be going into the office, it was still touch and go on whether or not, for a while, if you could only have one support person in the birthing suite with you. And I wasn't really getting like a clear answer whether or not you could at that stage. So Braden was there, but my mum was like, I'm going to drive like straight up. I was able to get through. I'm going to stay at the hotel, like right across from the hospital. Like, just call me if you need. I was talking to her and the midwife was like, but you're across the road. And my mum's like, yeah. She's like, right, you're here. We're like, we didn't think she could. And they're like, oh, no, of course. And I was like, oh, okay. So Mum's like, I'm coming over. And she just like throws the dinner over and then like comes over. A little part of me was like, do I need Mum? One extra person in the room is a bit overwhelming. But I tell you, as soon as she walked through the doors and like I smelled like her perfume, like the one she's worn like my entire life, it was just like this wave of like calm.
Relief. Yeah.
Like ready, like your mum is there with you. So at the end of the day, I was actually really glad that she was there.
That's good. And in a way, she's almost like a little bit like a doula because she does have the medical background, but she's not like there in a medical sense. Like she's there to help support you emotionally as well as not just like getting the baby out. So that's really good. Yeah, good. Did you have any difficulties with your pregnancy? Did you have any nausea or hyperemesis, lots of vomiting or anything out of the ordinary?
I don't love saying this because any woman that I've said this to, they're like, oh, okay. I actually had a very good pregnancy. I was waiting for all of it, to be honest. I didn't have any nausea. Honestly, I was really fine. I was kind of waiting potentially having gestational diabetes because my mum had it, which was pregnant with me. So there was like that slight thing there, but all clear. Probably up until the end, like it was just my sciatica, I think, that was hurting me. And then I guess just like the general uncomfortableness of having a big belly. But that was it. I actually had a very breezy pregnancy in itself. There was one funny thing that had happened though, where during an ultrasound, I think maybe at 20 weeks, it was very clear. It was clear whether or not I had a marginal cord insertion or a velamentous cord insertion, which is like the marginal is one where it's like the umbilical cord is instead of around the very edge of the placenta, whereas the velamentous is it's on the membranes of the uterus. And so the blood vessels between the insertion of the cord and the placenta, the blood vessels are exposed. They couldn't be entirely sure if it was either one. It ended up being like a low risk. The cords were weren't in front of like my cervix. The baby was growing well. So there weren't any red flags. It just meant that when it came to birth, that there might be a possibility of there being a C-section. And when it came to getting the placenta out, just being very sensitive with the pulling of it and removing it. Yeah. So that did cause a bit of anxiety throughout, because again, like no one was able to tell me exactly what it was. And again, like my GP wasn't the most helpful with reassuring me that things are okay.
Well, that's good that you had a really smooth pregnancy. Not a lot of women have that experience. So I understand that they would be envious of you. Did you go into labor naturally or did you get induced?
Kind of both. So I actually had her on my due date.
Oh, what?
Which was
Did
incredible.
you know that only like 5% of births ever come on their due date?
Yeah, in the last 10 minutes of the day. It was like 10 to midnight on the due date. So it was pretty incredible. As far as labor, it was actually kind of a funny story. So I was due on the Monday, and the Friday before I went into hospital because I hadn't felt her move for like several hours. But she was monitoring fine, but she just still wasn't moving as much as she normally had. She was pretty squirmy baby. The obstetrician was okay with the results. She suggested that because I was close to my due date, I could have an induction there to be on the safe side, just so we know like the baby's healthy right now. Don't know why she's not moving as much, but it was up to me. I decided against it. I said if she's like monitoring okay, like I'm happy. I've heard stories around what it's like when labor is induced. So I wanted to try to avoid that, though they did suggest that if I came back to hospital for the same reason of like, not feeling her for several hours, they would highly recommend inducing me at that stage, which I felt was fair. When we know the baby's safe and I'm at the due date, then like we can just be reassured. Got to that Monday morning of the due date and had been, again, several hours of no movement. So I went back, and so we, knowing that I probably would be induced, so we packed our bags and got ready for it. Baby was okay. And then the midwife came in to check if I was dilated or not, to know the size for the Foley bowl. Yeah. The balloon. Yeah. She checks and she looks up at me and she was a bit shocked. She was like, have you had any contractions lately or been like just generally cramping? And I was like, oh, just the Braxton Hicks like contractions, which I had been having for a few weeks anyways. And I said, and actually my back was like cramping a lot yesterday. She was like, well, you're 3 centimeters dilated. She's like, I think you've already been in labor. I was like, what? Like, I had no idea.
You're just so laid back. Like, this pregnancy is just like cruising.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
But they just said, again, because of the baby's movements being like slow or not there, her heart rate was going down every now and then. Not too concerning, but just on that cusp. They said they still wanted to like manually break my waters to progress labor, which I was okay with at the time. And then we just went to the delivery room from there.
How long were you in labor for?
Well, I don't know how long I was in labor before that like moment where the midwife had checked and I was already dilated. I think we got to the delivery room around like 2 p.m. and then I had her at like 11:50 that night.
How was your experience with labor? Like, was it just like crazy, or did it ramp up like after they broke your waters?
Yes, after they broke my waters, it went from 0 to 100 in pain, like within the hour. So quickly, I barely breathed. And then all of a sudden it was there and I had no idea how to like, and I was so clouded in any judgment and what should I be doing. And like, I knew there was like things I wanted to try. Like I knew I wanted to, try like warm showers, and like I already knew some like positioning or like, a yoga ball, and like Brendan had been prepared for all the massaging, like techniques and everything. Like we were trying all that out. But I just had no time to prepare and find the things that I really liked. Even the monitor at the time for me had a message come across saying to like ease off on the Pitocin, but I hadn't actually even received Pitocin at that stage. That's where I couldn't make any decisions there in that time. So that's when I chose to get the epidural, because I couldn't, and it was, which was insane. Like having, once the epidural had like kicked in, I was like, oh whoa,
yeah,
I can think.
Yeah. How was Brandon through the whole labor? Did he freak out, or was he like cool as a cucumber?
No, he was good. He was really calm. Before I had the epidural, and I was like going through the contractions. It's kind of funny. He's like rubbing my back, which was really nice. And he was like being like, "You're so good. Like you can do this." And at one point, I was like, "I need you to not talk. I need absolute silence." Like, and he was like, "All right." So he just like kept like rubbing my back, which was really sweet. But no, he was good. He was like so ready to be where I needed him to be. And then when it came time to pushing, and he's like, where do you need me? I was like, I need you like right here, like hold my hand. Like I didn't realize I'd be so like demanding, like of like what I needed. But like at the time, I guess when he was there, like I know some women like would want to have music. And so they prepare a whole playlist and they get there and they're like, actually, no, like I need complete silence, or it's the other way around. So it's, you don't know what you want until you're in that situation.
Yeah. It's good to be prepared though, right?
Oh, for sure. The plan of having, having baby vaginally and then do what I can to not have the epidural, I was still there. But then just with that situation, like I wouldn't have known that they would manually break my waters and that the contractions would have come on so fast. In some ways, I'm glad I got the epidural. In other ways, no, because there were some complications with the epidural for me too.
Did the epidural work like completely? Like some women say that they only get like half numb, like one leg is numb, but they still can't move, but they can still feel like all the pain down the other leg or something.
So something happened with it where I can't really remember exactly how I felt at the time, but it made the anaesthetist say, I don't think it had worked properly. But then it did start working properly. And then he put like the drug through, and then it then started working. And he was like, okay, I'm not sure really why it's working, but it is. So that's good. And I'm like, okay. And then after a while, it started to like wear off a bit. The contractions starting to come back. So the midwife upped the dose a little, like whatever like the next little bit is.
Yeah.
And that kicked in high gear. Like that started to come up, like it was getting up close to my chest. I was like, my arms are feeling funny, like they're in water. And they're like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Back. Like,
yeah.
Back. So they completely stopped that. And then at that time, I think it was like a few minutes later, they were like, it's time to push.
Probably like the fact that it wore off a little bit, you were able to feel the contractions and your body kind of responded to that and opened up. And it's a bit funny with an epidural because some women, they are in a lot of pain and then they have the epidural and like they close back up, like they stop dilating and baby goes back up. And then others are like so much pain, they have the epidural, and then just because they were so tense with all the pain, it's like the relaxation just helps them open up more. So it's so different from person to person. And sometimes the epidural doesn't work. And sometimes it might have been that they thought that they didn't manage to get it in the right spot. So they were probably like, oh, it didn't work. And then it probably did go into the right spot, or like only just missed it.
Yeah.
Or just got in. So how long were you laboring before you had the epidural?
I think it was maybe an hour, maybe almost 2 hours of me without the epidural.
Okay.
Like before, it was like within an hour from it going from like almost nothing to just like max, like within an hour.
How much dilated were you before they had the
I
epidural?
hadn't really progressed. I think it was maybe half a centimeter that I
Okay.
had progressed.
Okay. So like 4 centimeters or 3.5.
Maybe like, yeah, around 3.5, I think. Or maybe it was actually 3. Actually, no, you know what? It was 3 hours. Sorry. I'm like thinking of like the times on the clock. I remember there being a clock and for some reason being really hyper focused on it. So it was 3 hours, but between breaking my waters and then having the epidural.
God, I can't wait to experience it for myself.
And then I had the epidural. I was one of those women that just like opened up quite quickly after that. But is it, yeah, but what you said is so interesting that like it's so different for every woman and there's no way to test. It would be like I wish you could, there's like some way to test and be like to know if you should bother or not.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you were on the bed back when you were doing that. Like it's not like they helped you get into like on all fours or anything like that.
By that point, where to start pushing, it was almost at my chest and it was completely numb. So I couldn't even use my legs at all. But we tried pushing with me on the side, which for the first hour of pushing, but because I was completely numb. So like the midwife's like, try to push where my fingers are and in that area. And I'm like, I can't feel anything.
Where are they?
So I'm like pushing. So I'm like pushing blind. It was the most surreal experience of like pushing. Like, I kind of picture myself on the toilet.
Yeah,
like,
visualizing.
Muscles. Yeah, trying to get those muscles activated, and it was going really, really slow. And then finally, after that first hour, it started to wear off, and I could feel where that pressure point was to be like, oh, okay, that's where I need to push. So I was pushing. So the second hour, that's when I was like, yeah, pushing. But that was still going slow, and everyone wasn't sure exactly what was happening. So I said, I can feel the pressure. I feel confident. They could see those muscles working, but it was going a little bit slow. In 10 minutes, I was going to get to 2 hour mark. And the doctor had come at that point saying, we think we need to try and like, some interception here. Like soon you're starting to get really worn out. Like we were like, and I was like, can I just try like 10 more minutes? And they were like, yeah. They're like, sure. Like whatever you would like, but we would like to try that soon. Because like her heart rate was starting to like go down a fair amount. So, and then I did that. And then I'm also looking at the clock and seeing that it's like 11:45, and I was like, we have to have her on the due date. And so that was also my motivation. Like pushing. And then she eventually come out. There's actually a bit of silence when that happened. And then
that's not good.
No, and there was a lot of movement happening at that stage. And then I see her, and then I could see the doctors like trying to like sort of like drop her in a way and like catching her, and I guess to try like to get her to start screaming. And then
simulate
I'm not sure
coming out.
Yes. So she was doing that. Honestly, I don't even know how long it even was. It could have been like maybe 5-10 seconds. For me, it felt like a lifetime.
Yeah.
And then she eventually started crying, and then I felt this like big sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And so what I didn't find out until the next day, which I'm glad that my mom had waited the next day to tell me, was that why pushing was really a struggle, because the cord was wrapped around her neck 3 times. And so as I'm pushing, it's pulling her back. So the tension then, that's the heart rate going down. So when she had come out, that's what that silence was, because everyone saw that it wrapped around that many times. And then apparently there was really quick action of like, just like get her out, like unwrap as soon as possible. And then that activation, I don't think she was entirely blue at that stage, but it was enough. It was a sight that was scary enough. So it makes a lot of sense as to why pushing, especially in that second half. The first half you can understand because I didn't really know exactly where I was pushing, but that second half, like why it went on for so long. I had an ultrasound on that Friday when they went to go monitor, and it wasn't wrapped, so it would have happened within those like couple of days between the Friday and the Monday.
It's amazing that can happen in like just a few hours. When did she stop moving so much? Was it before you had the ultrasound or after?
So it was before I had that ultrasound. So that's when I went on the Friday saying there was like low movement, and then they decided to do an ultrasound that day.
I was going to say it's probably because she had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, but I guess not. Yeah, it can happen so fast.
Well, at least no one noticed it. Yeah, at least no one noticed it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that she's with us today and things didn't go more south than they did. Did you end up tearing?
Yes. I think I tore, I think it was like 1 degree in the perineum, but then I had like abrasions like on my labia as well. I need to stitch, but there was like a lot of abrasions apparently. Didn't know it was a thing.
One of my friends told me that she had like, it's called like grazes or something like that. And it's like where you tear a little bit on the inside. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that that could happen. So yeah, I'm learning lots. Personal experience again. Yeah. You just don't hear about this stuff unless you actually ask about it.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Like that whole experience, so different to other ones that I've heard. And then what happened after, like, did they leave you alone, like, for the golden hour? Or were they, like, you know, doing tests on her and stuff? Did you breastfeed?
They did those initials of the AGPA.
Yeah, APGAR.
APGAR scoring, whatever they have to do for that. And then just, cleaning her off, preparing her. And then, then they gave her to me. We had that like skin to skin. And then they kind of were just like cleaning up sort of like in the background. And then just kind of like left, like Brent and I were just like there with her. She wasn't really interested in breastfeeding. Like we tried, but she wasn't really like that into it. She's probably very sleepy and very exhausted, which was really nice. And then not too long after, they wheeled us off into a room.
How did you deliver your placenta? Did it just like come out naturally, or did they give you the injection?
No, it came out naturally. And it was a marginal cord insertion.
There you go. You found out.
Like, and I'm like, yes, I need to see this cord.
Yeah, tell me, show me.
This is like something I've been like stressing about for the last 20 weeks.
Yeah, I'm glad everything worked out in the end. Did you try any other pain relief methods, like, you know, the gas or like water in the shower or anything like that before you had the epidural?
No, I could barely walk to the toilet.
Okay, so it was like super intense. Like, how were you laboring? Sorry, I'm like really curious because the position that you labor in like has a huge effect. Did you try different positions to see if the pain would ease off a little bit?
There's like two ones. Like one was like on the yoga ball, and I had like my arm, like hands out on the bed, and sort of like leaning forward and like rolling on it felt like good, and it was like some sort of like movement instead of just like staying still and just like taking it on. And then for some reason, I guess I went to go sit on the toilet, and then for some reason that actually helped.
Yeah.
So I stayed on there for quite a while because I'm like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it like just opens your hips up, like it's the perfect position to push in, which is interesting. There's so many different things that I've learned like since becoming a doula, and it's like stuff that I would have never thought. Like there are like birth slings that you can hang off to save your partner's neck, or like little stools that you can sit on, like labor stools that simulate the toilet. After a little bit, did you feel the baby blues like a few days after, or did you not experience the baby blues? Do you know what I mean by the baby blues?
Yeah, that time was kind of funny because I spent another 6 days in hospital because it was like because the morning after we had realized that I'd had dural headaches, which would have come from the epidural. I think it seems like it would have punctured
like the spinal fluid leak a little bit.
Yeah. But that's why they think it made like why the epidural was kind of like did sort of work, but also not in the way they thought. The first 3 days, as soon as I'd sit up, I'd have an instant migraine.
That's what you want, right?
Yeah, and it brought me down a lot because it was really overwhelming, and I felt quite useless a lot of the time because especially even those first 4 days, like I couldn't pick her up, I couldn't change her nappy, I couldn't swaddle her. I was lying down the whole time, and that got me really down. So that's where I don't know where is baby blues and then where is it's probably a combination of both, to be honest.
Yeah, your hormones are just going crazy at that point, restabilizing, and they're all changing because the baby's now here. And there was like this study that said that women, their hormones that they release after they have their baby actually set them up to be for all those sleepless nights and stuff like that. Probably doesn't feel like it. Like you just feel dead after having a baby because you have like so many sleepless nights most of the time. But yeah, it like the hormones that we release actually give us more the ability to get up during the night and, prepare us for those sleepless nights. So yeah, like female hormones are crazy. I don't know, like they've got a mind of their own.
It's so intense.
Yeah. I try and explain it to Josiah, my husband, and he's like straight over his head. He's like, what? Yeah. Why do you do that? Like, how do you have so many hormones?
Woman.
Why are you women? Okay, so did you end up breastfeeding Aria, or did you go bottle feeding?
Yeah, I ended up breastfeeding.
Did you get some support from the hospital or just from your mom?
I got support from the hospital. I think it was like the third day was when the milk came through. That's intense. A very intense experience. So a lactation consultant came in, and at that stage I was having to lie down, and so she taught me how to feed like while lying on the side, and lying on the side as well and feeding that way, which was so helpful. Just giving me some of those like tips and tricks. I ended up feeding her that way even after like the headaches had gone. I still feeding her that way, so it was actually very comfortable.
Yeah,
I had to sort of like reach out again a little while, like maybe like a couple months after, be like, actually, what's the correct positioning for like the standard breastfeeding of like holding them up and sitting up, because I just didn't properly learn that one.
Yeah, people find the position that works for them and then they just stick with that. But there's so many great positions, like the football position where you hold them like rugby ball. Good for twins, where you have one under one arm, the other. Yeah. Twins are hectic, like one on each boob. Like that's just full time, full on.
Yeah, that's so full on.
Yeah. Did your mum stay around, or what support did you have during the postpartum period when you went home?
So it was like a week after. We were in the hospital for a week and then went home a week after. Brendan's mum had actually booked flights. She's in Cairns, so she had booked flights to come down for that week. So she took over while we were at home and then helped out. And then the week after, my mum came up from Pottsville and took over that second week while we were at home, which was good because Brendan had only started his job 2 months prior. He didn't have any paternity leave. So he just took off unpaid leave, I think, for like the 2 weeks. And then that's week 2 of us being home, he had to go back to work. He was working from home the whole time. I was really happy to have my mom there with me. Yeah,
that's good. Did you have many friends visit?
We couldn't really because of COVID. At that stage, there was a...
COVID was such a weird time, wasn't it?
I know. It was kind of a bit of a blessing at times because it was kind of nice to have the time for ourselves and to be able to be like one guest at a time, like every few days. So so we did have some friends come over. I think maybe after week 4, we were a bit comfortable with friends coming over if they were vaccinated as well.
Yeah.
And yes, we had friends come over and visit and say hey and help out whenever needed. One friend actually, which I think was honestly probably one of the most helpful things ever, was that she had pre-cooked like butter chicken curry. I think just like 8 containers or something, and we just like chucked them straight in the freezer. I think there's anything I can say to anyone who if you know someone who's pregnant, the best thing I think you can do for them after the birth is like maybe not like don't have to like do their dishes or unless you want to. I felt uncomfortable people like washing my dishes and doing my laundry. But like those meals were like a godsend. It's just like so easy, just to, like take out, chuck in the microwave, and then we're done. We've got food instead of having to like make it. And
it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah,
I mean the gifts are great and everything, but like when you've just had a baby, like you just don't want to host anyone. Like bring your own snacks,
exactly.
bring your own food, bring food for mum and dad. You know, ask if there's anything that you can do. Just like giving your time to them makes such a big difference because that's something that they don't have, time and space. Even just like holding the baby for a little bit so that mum or dad can go and have a shower. Yeah,
exactly.
Because as you said, she was like glued to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Got very used to being held by everyone. Everyone was holding her so a lot. So I think she maybe, I don't know if she's got used to it. She just needs a bit of extra comfort. But yeah, she was pretty glued to me.
Well, studies show that having that, just being constantly held, actually allows them to be more independent later on in their life. So I think that a lot of mums and dads are really careful and really scared that like the baby's going to get too attached to you. They're going to be attached to you for the rest of their lives. And when you have to leave them at school or something like that, it's going to be really hard for them, or like sleep in their own bed. But actually, they've just been inside you for 9 months. Of course, they want to be on you. It's tough, but I don't think that you're going to do anything wrong by holding them or letting them like sleep in your bed or next to you, you know, on those bedside cots. So looking back, do you think that you would have done anything differently?
It's hard to say, especially when it comes to the birth, because everything that happened in that situation, everything came together for that particular team at the precise time to get Aria through. the situation with the cord. I don't like anytime I think of like, oh, I would have done this thing differently. Like, who knows if where the timing would have been. In saying that, like, if I was pregnant again and was to give birth again, I probably had the same plan of trying to, wanting to give birth vaginally without pain relief, definitely without epidural. That was a little traumatic. Yeah. But I think I want to do some hypnobirthing classes, learn some other breathing techniques and relaxation exercises, learn like other ways of just being able to feel like a bit more empowered. I think in those classes, they help you to put together like a, decision-making framework so that it's not necessarily like your plan, but it's at least a guide for yourself. Yeah. For when you're in labor and you are feeling a bit clouded, decision-making isn't as overwhelming at that time.
And also something that I tell a lot of mums is just like knowing the stages of labor, what you would experience in each labor like stage, so that you can be like, oh, I'm experiencing this. This probably means that I'm in transition, or, the baby's coming soon, or something like that. So for any mum to know, especially when they're not getting educated by their GP properly or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. That's nothing I'll do differently. I would. Another birthing professional.
I mean, you kind of had that support that a doula provides, but do you think that you would like to look into something like that, or like having like kind of continuity of care with your midwife so that the midwife can know you before your birth and then support you? And
definitely.
I think you've already touched on this. Like, any advice that you'd give mums or families planning to become pregnant or already on their pregnancy journey?
Well, using the natural cycles app was great for getting pregnant.
You have to be very vigilant if you use it.
I got a pregnancy pillow kind of late, which I wish I got a lot sooner. So it was a bit of a gimmick. But oh my God, it's so good for like side sleeping.
Do you still use it?
Figure? No. No. I ended up like gave it away to someone. It's such a big pillow and we got like a queen bed. So we used to still like for a little bit afterwards, but it's gone now. Actually, like other advice, I guess around like pregnancies, at least like for me, the days where I felt like really anxious, I'd realized I hadn't done any activities for me that made me feel connected to my body. And so which came with a bit of like disconnect, a bit of like lack of confidence, a bit of uncomfortableness. And so for me, like pregnancy Pilates and yoga, like even if it was just like 10 minutes in the morning or something, worked for me just to help me a bit. And so I would suggest to people like finding their own method of feeling connected and confident within themselves and their body, and then just having that like confidence that your body is doing what it needs to be doing during this time. So I would suggest for people to do that. And also, if you feel that something is off or wrong, go seek help, or like go to the hospital to get monitored. Like, no one's going to turn you away. No one thinks you're annoying as much as I thought every single time. So there's like 2 other times where I hadn't felt a kick for a while during my pregnancy before the end of it. But it's also because I had an anterior placenta, so it's a bit softer. No one ever turned me away. Everyone was so welcoming and happy, and they're like, it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
So say that to people. Don't be afraid to get checked out.
I think I say this in every single episode. Mum intuition is real. You're the one who's pregnant, trust your instincts, especially when you want to have like a natural birth, feeling if something's right for you. You had a feeling that you needed to have that epidural. That was probably a little bit of like, oh my God, it's like so painful. Like I wasn't expecting this, but then it's also like a little bit of mum intuition. In a way, like knowing that maybe something is going on, trusting the intuition and following what you think. And if the doctors are saying like, hey, you need an epidural, and then they don't really give you a proper reason, trust your instinct that the doctor probably just wants to go home to his family.
I agree.
That's a big one, following your intuition and knowing when to speak up for yourself.
Exactly.
Awesome. Do you think you'll try for another baby soon, or you're just loving having Aria at the moment?
Yeah, we're just loving having Aria at the moment. She's just a bit over 2 now, and we've definitely hit that toddler stage. I can't imagine having a newborn right now. Props to mothers who do that, because it's intense.
Yeah, she's such a little character. Oh my God. But you hang out with your sisters. One of your sisters has a baby, right?
Yes, she's 18 months older than Aria. So it's pretty sweet.
They actually look quite similar. I didn't realize that you had 2 sisters. I kind of like stalked your younger sister. And I was like, oh, okay, she has a second sister. I just knew about the one who had a baby. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for telling me. I love that
It's okay.
story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to talk to you today. And I love hearing birth stories. They're so great. And I can't wait to experience it for myself. Like, definitely with all this knowledge that I'm building up now, be pulled in like different directions. Like, I know this stuff from experience or like talking to other mums, but then like I'm trying to follow my mum intuition. Like, what should I do? So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. We're almost in like a harder position. I was just kind of like blissfully unaware of so many things.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's good to be unaware, right? Then you're not scared. Or sometimes it makes you more scared. So yeah. You can find Claudia at Mouse House on Instagram, as she said before, or on her website, mousehousestudio.com. Yeah, she sells some really great prints. So check it out. I will be getting some for my house, definitely. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you give us a follow and rate the show. And if you know someone who you think needs to hear this episode, give it a share so we can spread the word and educate more mamas and women worldwide. And we'll see you next Monday for another juicy episode. For more information on pregnancy, birth, and parenthood, head over to my website or Instagram at blissfulbirth.co. And just a little reminder, the information contained in this podcast is here to educate and empower and does not replace the advice of your own healthcare provider.